So of the 150 companies and schools that have visited Target and wanted to get a tour of our dojo, there's one question that has been asked more often than any other question they've asked. And that question is, how did you change your culture so quickly? And as a large retailer within the domestic US, the Agile adoption and DevOps adoption at Target has garnered a lot of interest from many companies, which is why they're asking that question over and over again. How did you change your culture so quickly? Well, I have two answers to that. The first one's pretty straightforward. I'm going to share that with you right now. We just started. We didn't come up with an elaborate plan. We kept it extremely simple, and we jumped right in. We listened, we learned, and we adapted along the way. But this simple concept apparently is very difficult for many companies to implement because leaders are looking for detailed plans around their transformation. And I can tell you at Target, if we were to try to predict and plan out the way that our evolution in this journey went, it would never have happened. Never have happened. So that's the first answer. Like I said, pretty straightforward. The second answer I have for you is what our talk's about. In this talk, we'll share with you the implementation or the investments we made along our journey that have supported the foundation around a change in our agility. I will share with you evolution of agility at Target, how we've come about to where we are today, and what we see on the horizon as we try to grasp for enterprise business agility. And Ross will share a story with you, a real example of how agility has come to life at Target. My name is Travis Klinker. I am the director of our Agile and Engineering Enablement team at Target. We are a team of coaches that support the entire organization, and we also operate the Target Dojo, which is our immersive learning space.
Hi, I'm Ross Libby, Agile product coach on the team Travis just mentioned, and over the course of this talk, I'll be sharing my story for greasing the gears towards enterprise business agility. It's going to highlight elements of the larger journey happening at Target, really showcasing inner workings, connection points, and what it takes to harness those learnings and successes into momentum. I don't want to give away too much. What I will share, though, is that, like many of the modern machinery marvels, it started with a simple idea developed through iteration. Likewise, my account will talk about how intrigue brought a group to me. And through our inflection points, we built as we went along.
So we had to set a foundation. This starts with individuals and teams. And it was establishing team agility. And there was three things that we did right off the bat. We had executive support. Our CIO was new to the company. He understood how to operate in a product model and how to adopt Agile and DevOps concepts, and he felt there was value in doing so. So we had air cover in order to take those grassroots efforts and fuel those into the norm of working versus the exception. The second thing is we put an emphasis on building an engineering culture, establishing a solid architectural strategy, and building out design systems. And the third, we put a focus on building the internal coaching team for the organization, a team that was dedicated to providing the training, the coaching, and support to the individuals and teams to bring team agility to life so that we had teams that were trusted and empowered to do what they needed to do. And we started this in the IT side, but we've done the same on the business as well.
Right you are, Travis. In fact, my story is going to highlight non-IT teams and their work. And it starts long ago in a distant dojo. All right, it wasn't that long ago, it was this prior year. Not that distance of a dojo, it's our immersive learning environment in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Nonetheless, it began with a few individuals from our learning and development department and the spark of interest which brought them to me as their coach. The intrigue was around Agile, because they were running into it with their partners in different areas of the organization. You see, they had something called an ADDIE model, which has been a mainstay for training development content since 1975. It's an acronym standing for Analyze, Design, Development, Implementation, and Evaluation. From that description, you probably see the fit with a traditional kind of approach to how we handle projects, and the intrigue around Agile. So bringing their work, which was training development content, to accompany a process improvement for our field facilities, they came to me, and we rolled up our sleeves, we used rapid iteration, and we dug in. What we uncovered was that training, content development, and software delivery are not fundamentally different. They both benefit from similar ways of work and mindsets. The group themselves stated, because of the skills you introduced us to and helped us refine, we can publish training content daily. Yet retrospect brought us to that first inflection point, being these individuals, for as great as they were doing, there was a risk of spinning without true traction. And without team agility happening, inner working of it, they would, quite frankly, have a stoppage. Team offers the structure for momentum. So what do? We brought their team in. As we got things going, as we geared up, central to the success with their team was the fact that these early adopters were embedded in the inner workings. They modeled the mindset, the way of work. As a result, we solidified team agility. We realized incremental progress. We used swarming, story splitting, cross-training to do this. And yet another inflection point after a short while we came upon. That being, the learning and development team was only one part of the solution needed for this larger process improvement to really kick into motion. We were going to need to engage another level of agility and the teams involved in it.
So immediately on the heels of establishing team agility and working on that, we needed to scale this. And we used a product operating model to incorporate product teams. The days of projects were gone. We had stable product teams that we can work from. And these are a set of teams focused on a set of capabilities that support their specific product. And the thing that we needed to focus on here was we didn't focus specifically on a framework of scaling, because this is essentially a scaling effect. Instead, we doubled down our efforts on building out that team agility, and then we started to incorporate concepts around product management and cross-functional collaboration. How do I talk to other teams, right? We focused on that. And we incorporated some investments in lean portfolio management concepts. What is the vision for your product? We heard vision a lot earlier today. And we also, what outcome are you trying to achieve? Don't worry about the output. Let's think about what outcome you're trying to achieve. And we leveraged objectives and key results as a way to anchor back to what those outcomes are and how to effectively measure these. We also got rid of or changed two things: our planning process and our financial process. So for financial planning, the days of annual planning and budgeting were gone. We shrunk those down to 6 months, and we focused on what outcome are we trying to accomplish for our product, and at 6 months, we had a check-in. How are we doing? What did we learn? Is this the right thing to continue to invest in, or should we pivot at this point in time? The second was around planning. So rather than focusing on an annual year of plans, we shrunk that down to a quarter. Heard a lot around quarterly planning. The same concept. What outcome are you trying to accomplish over the next 90 days? Let's put that in practice and put that in place. And our coaches help to facilitate these sessions because these are really difficult. It is really difficult for teams to figure out how to write objectives appropriately. What outcomes am I really trying to go after? And these quarterly planning sessions, it takes 3 or 4 of them before you really get the hang of it.
Picking our story back up, we came to that realization team agility could have a cap to how productive it could be. In some cases, sure, one team could deliver the value, but in ours, like many, we needed cross-functional collaboration. We needed the likes of HR, operations, the finance department to really work cross-functionally with us, because without that happening, we ran the risk of the progress being halted. So we undertook the necessary effort to obtain buy-in from those key participants, from their leaders, to really say, let's get a team together as a product. Didn't happen overnight, but before too long, we had the necessary participation to get things moving again in our dojo. For this go of it, we kicked it up with product definition. We defined the problem statement. We created personas. We drafted objectives and key results. Admittedly, there was grinding of gears to begin with, but I knew we were ready to get things revving when after our first iteration, 3 days in, we did a retro with this new collection team of teams. And one of the newer additions said, I typically don't get involved in work this early on. And while it took me a while to find my place, the shared understanding achieved, the collaboration that followed allowed us to accomplish more in 3 days than the prior 2 months. That was a wow for me and going, how could that be? But when I looked at it, it really came down to 3 factors. One, that product definition I mentioned. Leaders and teams could align on the why. 2, was the fact that our dojo format, the hyper-focus, reinforced the way of work across this teams of teams, as well as the mindset. And 3 was simply cross-functional collaboration was happening daily, at best prior every other week. And these came together, as Travis just described, to form product agility. Clicking on all cylinders from here on out, right? We're good to go? Not quite. After a short while, we came to our next inflection point, and the opportunity arose to be more strategic.
Which brings us to our next level of agility, strategic agility. This is where we want to be able to be innovative in order to identify new markets, new customers, or create new products that delight our existing customers. And in here, there was two things we really wanted to anchor to. The customer, putting the customer in the center of everything, especially around that strategy or our enterprise initiatives. We should really understand what our customer needs are and start to deliver against those. But even more important, the teams truly understanding who that customer is for that specific initiative and how their product is delivering against it. Because strategic initiatives cross over all these products, cross over multiple pyramids. And it's really difficult to navigate that. The second thing is around experimentation and implementation or innovation. We want to make sure that that's happening by everybody. Everybody has a responsibility to experiment and innovate. The days of it being a separate department focused on innovation are gone. We all have a responsibility to do that and bring that to life. And by operating in an agile way, we can do that. We can start to operate, experiment, and because we know who our customer is and our coaches are helping them understand how to do the validation around what they're putting forward to make sure it's hitting the strategy. And that's what we're focusing on with the teams around strategy.
For our crew in the dojo, strategic agility was missing from the mix. We had company strategies, regulatory priorities that this process improvement had to take into account. The product had to think about it in order for it to integrate with the larger initiatives at play. Now, in the past, quite frankly, this would have been disheartening for a team to run across this. It would have been left to the leaders to figure out, how do we fix it? Not the case for us. We had continuous improvement embedded in the mindset, an inspect and adapt mentality ingrained in our way of work. And with these, we made the connections in the following ways. One was greater transparency around the work to those leaders, to customers like internal audit in our case, and to, or I should say partners like internal audit in our case, and the customers who were in the field. A prime example of this was sprint reviews. During those, we had those leaders, we had internal audit, and we had that customer in the field via phone in attendance, interacting, providing feedback. Now, quite frankly, from here, we felt like we had what we needed to get going. We looked to this group to push it forward, but we knew we had to rely on some of our learnings, and those being, one, revisit your objectives and key results. Take that and harness them against the strategic priorities. That is a clear criteria for prioritization. And lastly was the fact of, take your partners, internal audit in our case. They had findings. They had the findings process, and use that. Not as a requirements document, not as a backlog for output tracking, but rather an idea backlog through which experiments could be defined to track progress against desired outcomes. Through this, we really established that customer-centric view, and we accelerated the path from experimentation to innovation. And yet, once again, we had another inflection point laying ahead for us, this time with organizational dynamics.
So as I look to the horizon of what we're going to tackle next, it's about operational agility. And you can think about team, product, and strategy. Those are executing things out the door. And yes, we're improving operations and process. We're bringing operational agility to those. But when I talk about operational at this level, I'm referring to the entire enterprise. I'm referring to the corporate divisions that have an impact on those executing teams. Finance, HR, and others that have policies in place. If those policies are detracting the way that we want these teams to be working, we want to change that. We want to figure out, what is that policy trying to accomplish? Is it still relevant? And if it is, how do we still achieve that, but still yet support the teams in these new ways of working? And that's what we're looking to change. And our coaching has been there to help start to dissect this and start to figure out how we bring operational agility to life. And I think about it as fine-tuning the organization. If anybody's familiar with a string instrument, if you take a guitar, you're tuning one string at a time to get to the right note. But as you tune one string, you need to go back to the others to get that back in tune for the entire instrument. That's what we're doing for the organization. We're fine-tuning the organization. And through these levels, we feel that we can get there.
As mentioned, operational agility is that desired future state, also quite relevant as it relates to my story, because as this team of teams transitioned out of our dojo, there was a blockage in the production line. Blockage being organizational structure, one that promoted hierarchy, pyramid lines, individual contribution over team collaboration. In short, our organizational design did not support strategic agility. It didn't support product agility. It was actually a detractor from teams, frankly, being agile in their ways of work, in their mindset. So is this another one of those stories where ends in kind of crushing defeat? Corporate status quo stops production? Hardly. Think about where this started, that movement by learning and development. From there, The many moving parts aligned, calibrated to harness the momentum. And yes, operational aspects did add to the wear and tear. However, that's where coach comes in. I remained available, performing maintenance, performing tuning. As a result of all these factors, I'm happy to share the desired outcome of this process improvement was delivered faster with less waste. But I view more importantly the other factors, that being learning and development embraces us in their agility endeavors. They look to coaching and bring key initiatives our way for continued help. Additionally, the exposure to agility for internal audit brought forth champions. They leverage our dojo for their process improvement steps. Specifically, that findings process I mentioned, which can take as long as 6 months, they brought it down to 6 weeks. More importantly, incorporating a customer focus, an outcome focus. And our journey, it's far from over. But it's that story I shared, the learnings, the successes, the progress, as well as numerous others happening at Target that keeps us looking towards this vision of what the future can be. Network teams, connected, working in harmony around customer experience, and supported by a truly agile enterprise, keeping everything working smoothly. And this vision for the future keeps me motivated. It reinforces the work of coaching, of our dojo, and how we can calibrate across these levels of agility, and how we, quite frankly, grease the gears for the enterprise.
And this is where we're headed, enterprise business agility. We feel this is a way to get there. And why is it so important to Target? Because we're having to respond to a number of things. Economic and demographic changes are happening rapidly. We're starting to see change in consumer behavior based on technology and innovation. Consumers are interested in socially responsible companies and products. And our competitive landscape is changing rapidly. We have niche players that are popping up everywhere, such as Dollar Shave Club and Stitch Fix, that are focused specifically on a thing. And what we need to be able to do is be able to react to those market changes, as well as jump on market opportunities in a very productive and cost-effective way. And that's what enterprise business agility is to us. And we feel that coaching is central to all of this. We feel that the coaching organization can help the organization push itself out into the fringe of opportunities and in that uncomfort zone so that we can continue to grow. And I always relate to this to the analogy of professional sports. You could take any professional sports and any team that goes to a championship game, whether it's the World Series, the Super Bowl, whatever it may be. When that team wins that game, they're at the top of their game. Well, what do you think would happen if the owner said, team, you're the best. You know how to win. You got the skills. You can win. Firing all the coaches, just go out and win. Do you think that team would ever win a championship again? Probably not, right? And I think at a large organization or corporation, the same is true. You need those coaches to continue to push the continuous improvement and learning that needs to happen in the organization. Continue to push them to the fringe and the uncomfortable zone so we can continue to be very competitive.
Our parting thoughts on all of this, it's be curious. You never know where inspiration may come from. Seek thought partners. Take note of those inflection points. Let that inform your experimentation, your iteration. A team. Travis and I both talked about people being foundational, fundamental. You need to empower them. The way forward isn't known. It's emergent, and they need to be the ones that dictate, quite frankly, what the right team looks like and how do you connect.
And just take advantage of that executive support. If you can get that executive support and that air cover, go explore, start to do the great things that you can do and show those successes. That executive support is such a powerful thing. And finally, just start. And start making those investments as you start going along. But don't hesitate. Don't try to put a detailed plan together. Just jump in and start doing it, because you're going to learn and you're going to adapt as you go. There's no way you can predict how this is going to unfold. So with that, if you'd like to learn more around our story, I'd encourage you to check out dojo.target.com. And we're kind of putting a stake in the ground in regards to what enterprise business agility looks like to us and what we think we want to go after. But I definitely want to hear from you as well on what your stories are and how you're shaping that at your company as well. So find us afterwards. Thank you.